This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Mike Sedita.
Hello, welcome to episode 136 of the Good Neighbor Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sedita. Today we are in for a treat. If you live in the Wesley Chapel in the Pasco County area, we are going to be speaking to Rick Marshall. He is the owner of the Steam Factory in Wesley Chapel. Rick, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
I'm glad to have you on. I wanted to give you a little bit of a background on the Good Neighbor Podcast so you know how we got started and what we do. Back in 2020 during COVID, when everybody was socially distant, the Good Neighbor Podcast was specifically started as a way for business owners, entrepreneurs like you to get your message about your brand into the community. And over the last 4 years, we now have podcasts in Denver, Atlanta, Virginia, here in Tampa. I get to speak to business owners like you. So with that said, let the audience know, what is the Steam Factory?
Yeah, well, the Steam Factory is a STEM education center for school-age kids. And we focus on cybersecurity training, software development, maker lab or robotics. And we also provide homework help and assistance for kids that need that coming out of school. And we'll also provide like after school services or parents' night out, special events, and those type of things at the center to give parents a little bit of a much needed break.
Yeah, and you guys are located right off Bruce B. Downs, right in Wesley Chapel, kind of wedged. What would that be, like just south of Baycare, just north of Advent Health, right in that little pocket there, right?
Right in the little pocket, conveniently located right next to Dunkin' Donuts. So it's your
So you can caffeinate and go bring your kids to do robotics so they know how to smash everything.
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny. I just had this conversation recently with somebody talking about school and, you know, some of the things we learned in school that, you know, just don't have practical application. And the beauty of it is, and I've been to your facility, full disclosure, you live in one of the communities that gets Wiregrass Living magazine, which is my magazine, and your family's going to be on the cover in an upcoming issue soon. But I've been to your facility, and the location is convenient, but the thing that impressed me the most is kind of like, for lack of a better term, the curriculum. Like, if I could have learned something that I could practically, like that has practicality to use in the real world when I was at that school age, that wasn't like, like I was saying, the joke was, I don't know what I've ever done with the Pythagorean theorem. Like, what am I ever going to do with that? Now, I'm sure they still teach geometry in school, but if I could have learned more stocks, if I could have learned more cybersecurity and computer stuff, that would have taken me to the next level when I was actually trying to get into college for that would have been great. And just getting kids who maybe don't know if they're interested in this stuff, giving them the exposure to that is a really great thing to have right here in our community. How did you get into this? I mean, is your past as an educator? I mean, you're a businessman. What got you into this to be able to bring this to the community?
Well, so that's a long history. I mean, growing up, I had a father who was not afraid at trying new things in the STEM environment. The man built 3 houses, built our first Apple IIe computer system from scratch, like literally welding the parts on the board, built a satellite receiver dish from scratch, including welding all the parts together so we could get free satellite HBO when it first came out.
Right.
So I grew up with this sense of not being afraid to try some of these highly technical things, because it's a matter of reading and solving the problem and actually executing on it and learning as you go. Fast forward to spending 20 years or so in the military, the education and really nurturing soldiers, you know, as they transition through their career was where my kind of passion for helping people to grow and to learn came from. And then sometime around 2006, I started looking for the second career outside of the military. I had to make a decision. And so I got my MBA in technology management. I went to work for General Dynamics and some of the big Fortune 50 companies. But the desire to learn and nurture was always still in the back of my head. So about 2017, we decided to take that journey of starting the school.
And where's you're not originally from here. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Washington State. So I grew up in Washington State. And then, of course, the military took me all around the world, tours in Europe and South America and a few other countries.
And what was the draw to Tampa? I mean, was it just the weather? I mean, it could be just the weather. No one's going to fault it for being just the weather. But was there, like, did you see economic prosperity? Like, were those all factors, or was it just like, hey, I want to be, in the sun?
Yeah, so we were living in England, up near Cambridge. And the job that I had at the time was starting to transition, and we started looking into the United States of where would we move back to, where would be an opportune place. This was 2012, so it was at the bottom of the housing market.
Right.
And we saw Tampa as just very quiet with regards to a large metro area compared to like New York City or LA or any of these type of places, and had a lot of growth potential. And we weren't wrong. We were fabulously right, if you will. So it's been a great place to raise kids. We moved into the Wesley Chapel, New Tampa area, and have just had a really great experience, raising our family here.
So let me ask you this. What is one of the things, like, so when a family comes and they're looking at your curriculum, let me back up. What is generally when someone's coming in, are they coming in specifically for the curriculum, or is it just kind of like this is an after school program? Because you did touch on helping kids, giving them some time to do help with their schoolwork and things like that. Is it mainly families are looking for something specific like cybersecurity or robotics and you're there? Or is it like, hey, look, I need my kid to be in an after school program so I know they're safe and not wasting time and learning something. And then it's like, oh, these are great extras. Yeah,
I think we're thinking it's both. We're seeing it's both.
Okay.
The interaction that we've had from families, we've had multiple families that kids are very into technology. They're into video games, and the family recognizes that technology is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And in fact, as we start to rationalize what ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is going to do to our lives, it's becoming more and more important. And as the kids show an aptitude and an interest into these things, they want to necessarily help their kid get involved with a little bit more targeted resources for development. But then you also have the families where the kid maybe doesn't show a huge interest, but being associated or having a center where the kid can relax, play, get their homework done, and be surrounded by technology can kind of spark that interest as the children start to say, okay, you don't have to be a genius to do this.
Right.
It is obtainable by me. And then, eventually they start growing an interest in it just from proximity, if you will. So, yeah, we're seeing about 50-50 interest on both sides from that aspect.
And that brings up two other questions I had for you. From an enrollment standpoint, what is capacity? I mean, that facility is beautiful. I mean, the way you built it out is great. What's your capacity? How many kids can be enrolled?
So for the coding and cybersecurity, we can take up to 22 kids an hour. So we have the ability to expand out even further than that, up to 26. That would be pushing it, and I think it would be kind of chaotic at that point to put that many kids.
Just from like a instructor overseeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we for the cyber security and coding, we have a 2-to-1 ratio for instructors, no more than 2-to-1. So they get very curated experience.
Wow.
During that period, the homework help and the hourly care is more like 12-to-1, where the kids don't necessarily need somebody like working with them nonstop. They just need.
They might have a question here or there.
Absolutely. It gives them the time to kind of work for themselves, finish their homework, and then they can enjoy the rest of the center. We do have 4 Xbox stations and some movies as well, so the kids have a right to, or have the ability to take a break when they need to clear their mind and then get back to their learning journey.
It's funny, you segued perfectly into my next question, because one of the things, when I was there, the gaming stations that you have, what's an interesting thing that you talked about, like the way education is going, there's actually in college sports teams, but they're gaming teams. So is that part of, I know that's part of like the downtime in the facility there, but is there a thought to maybe go to, how do we, get kids into gaming to where they could actually get a scholarship to a college? Because it blows my mind, because I grew up on Pong, and Pac-Man, that kids are getting gaming scholarships to go play games. Is that something that could be down the road?
It absolutely could be. We definitely want to look at the channels of technology and how that affects our lives and allow the kids to experience those, gain experience, to decide whether that's the right choice for them, and how do they be successful in utilizing that channel in their life.
It's so crazy. I mean, you and I have talked. We're kind of around the same age. When I was coming up, it was you either went to college prep, you got a trade, or you went into the military. Those were literally like the three avenues you could go down. And if you didn't have the skill set for a trade, but you weren't smart enough to go to college, it was kind of like either military or like public service, like my town had like a DPW or even local law enforcement. Like those guys could pass a civil service exam or the post office. So now there is so many things that kids could get into and make a career out of it. It's just wild to think how it's expanded in a world where the world has become like smaller. Like you have access to so many things in so many places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you on that, it is a big discussion in public discourse, the value of a college degree given the expenses. And entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and others are challenging the assumption that to be a good employee, you need a college degree. Now, that's not my stance. I still think that, college education is important, but it's an ROI decision. We really have to value whether we need it for our career and for our betterment. And if it's not the right answer, then to your point, what other resources do we have to get us where we need to be?
And the funny thing is, look, I believe that there's a thing called the college experience, right? Like you're going to go and get an education as far as like the books and the X's and O's of that part of the education. But there's also a component to the college experience that educates you a little bit on life, personal interaction, and listen, the parties and the things that you experience to learn what to do, what not to do. There's a whole sphere that encompasses that quote unquote education. There is also something to be said for certain jobs you just don't need a college degree for. Like if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're a nurse, if you're a professional CPA, I get it. You need that designation. I get all that. But exactly what you're saying, like is $300,000 worth of debt worth the college, worth the job you're going to get. And then the other thing of it too, because I worked in finance in my past life, and I remember 1994, I was working in Atlanta for a Nations Bank, which is now Bank of America. First time I ever met a Harvard MBA. I was 22 years old. I was still going to school and working a job and doing all this stuff. I met this Harvard MBA. And he basically said, look, you can get an education anywhere. If you want to get an education, you can get the education anywhere. If you have an Ivy League degree, though, it does make a difference in how you kind of are seen in the world. But that was the biggest thing. Guys I went to school with went and got a junior college, community college associate's degree, and then went on to get a bachelor's degree from a local New Jersey, one of the state colleges. That has the same weight as someone who spent $30,000 a year at a private school, and you're paying for it. My ex-wife was still paying for it, 20 years after she graduated. So is it worth it? I don't know. It depends, I guess, on the career you're going to go into. And then the other part of it too is there's a drastic shortage of tradespeople. I mean, it's incredibly drastically shortage of tradespeople. So the nice thing about what you guys do is, hey, look, maybe I go in and I get that experience in robotics, but maybe I don't want to do that. But now I know how to handle the infrastructure to maybe be a plumber or an electrician, or maybe that's the path I go down because I got the exposure to the technical side of it. It's great. I believe that when kids are at that age, the more exposure they have to different stuff to let them kind of see what excites them, because I didn't really have that. It was like, college or be a mason was the two options.
Right. Yeah. And the exciting thing for me is the technology that we're going to expose the kids to can be used in any aspects of life. So for example, you are raised by a family of plumbers, that's where you're headed. You can come to the school and learn how to use ChatGPT expertly. Now I can create bids at twice the rate of my competitors. I can, fill out paperwork much, much faster, spending more time making money. So no, there's absolutely applicability in every aspect of technology. It's a matter of finding a place where the instructors can see beyond just the curriculum, and then how can we actually utilize that? Going back to your comment about the Pythagorean theorem, how in the heck are we going to use that?
Right. Where's the practicality to it?
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. I know you have been immersed in developing this facility and getting it started and all the technology that's in there for your kids. When you guys aren't there, I mean, what is it, like the 3 hours a week that you're not there, what do you guys do for fun?
So two things. If you ask my wife, it's traveling. That's the most important thing. And she's a very well-traveled person. So she tries to get us out of the house and to see new things around the world whenever she can. And when it's just myself, I'm fidgeting with new toys, new parts, new robots, new 3D prints, trying to get new software to work. I'm a habitual fiddler. I like to play with those things.
Okay, so let me ask you this: as a kid growing up with your dad, the way you kind of presented him, how many times did you blow stuff up?
Probably more than I can admit on camera.
Well, it's funny. So my dad was like a woodworking guy. Like he was the king of the badly built birdhouse type of guy.
Yeah.
That was my dad. Any piece of wood, you could never throw out a piece of wood. Like you never know when you're going to need that 6 inches of crown molding sometime. So we had like a lumber yard in our garage. It was just crazy. Yeah. So I was never really good with that stuff. But then in 10th grade, so this is 1987-ish, 88, I built for Christmas a drop leaf table in wood shop, thinking it's going to impress my dad. Like it's nicer than any piece of wood he's built. And I give it to my parents for Christmas that year. And he's like, the hinge he's like critiquing my hinge. It was a little too squeaky. But the moral to that story is that table is literally still in my house. I've kept it all these years. It's lasted the test of time. So joke's on you, Dad. The hinge is still good. But yes, I can imagine having a dad like that. You're always kind of into stuff. Like, let me just try this. Let me just do that. Do you miss Radio Shack? Was Radio Shack like a store for you?
Horribly.
Yeah.
We have I even toyed with the idea of putting a Radio Shack Express right here in the store just to have the parts available. But
it was so cool.
We missed that. And I think we're coming into a time when fixing things is coming back as things become more expensive. A family of 4 is a $50 to $75 bill to go to McDonald's. We're going to start valuing repairing and keeping things healthy rather than just the disposable economy we've been in. And you're going to see a lot more of the desire to learn to fix things and learn to get into the electronics. They're not as untouchable as they once were. So
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think what's happening too, especially in like with blowing it up on a bigger scale on the home market, where for a long time people are like, I'm just going to buy a house, it's going to go up, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to move to the next house, start over. Like that was kind of still that disposable, property type of thing. And as the market has shifted, you're seeing a lot of people now like, I'm just going to fix up this and paint this and change this and put a new light fixture here and freshen it up. There's a lot of that. People, kind of diving into the things that they used to just pass off. And a store like Radio Shack would be great. You don't know how many times, I'm sure you went through this, like you're in the middle of doing a project on some little thing and you're like, I need this one connector or I need this one plug attachment thing. And you'd go to Radio Shack and they always had it. They had the stupid little trinkets and the stuff that they had, but they always had everything you needed, which is great.
I'll even tell you another story. We had our pool system had 4 relays and I wanted to hook lights up to my pool system. So I had the automated remote. I didn't have an extra space. So I looked into it and it was going to cost me somewhere around $1,500 to get a new control panel.
Right.
So I did a little bit of research and found out it was a 10-cent resistor that got soldered into the board to give me the extra set of relays that were in it. I was out there at Radio Shack, like you said, got my 10-cent resistor, soldered it in, and I was able to save myself $1,500 just by trying that.
That is crazy. So you like to tinker. Let me ask you this: in the tinkering, have you I mean, do you have a fleet of robots? Like do you watch like that BattleBots show? Like, are you into that?
Yeah,
So
I have.
You have a series of robots.
Most of them are in pieces and have been pulled apart to make other ones because economy. But yeah, I one of the things we're going to do with the kids here is as they start to become more and more mature with the robotics, we're going to host a BattleBots here at the facility.
That's it. And let me ask you this coming up. I mean, things like spring break and summer, like, do you guys have special programs in place that you're going to like offer to families? And I hate to use the term daycare because I know it's not daycare, but it's kind of like making sure the kids are in a safe space doing something productive. Do you have programs coming up in place that people can find out about?
Oh, absolutely. We're planning on doing spring break, summer break, and winter break programs for all of those so that, let's face it, kids get off for winter break. You got about 2 weeks of just downtime. Getting into a center like this and be able to hang out with your friends for a little bit, goof around with some robots, play some video games while the family Aunt Etna's at home talking about the old days. It's a nice break for the kids. So yeah, absolutely. We've got those in place and we look forward to sharing that with the community as they develop.
So here's one question I always like to ask business owners, because besides, we do us doing this for you to get people to know you're here and talk about families coming in the community. There's also entrepreneurs that are listening to this, and you clearly have that entrepreneurial spirit. What has been a time where you've been faced with a challenge? Now, you could tell me it's supply chain because I've seen some of the stuff you went through. But has there been a time when you're like, look, I don't know if we're going to get through this, and you look at your wife and say, let's just go in a different direction, and you guys came through it and came to the point where you're at today? What's been that challenge, and how did you overcome it?
I would say the funding aspect is the hardest because, you can do all the planning you want and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's just making sure that you have enough funding in place and where that's coming from. We ran into several cases where, we had funding all set up and all of a sudden it dried up overnight. Things changed and it really leaves you kind of trying to figure out and solve the problem of how are you going to continue to seed this? Because as you said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a millionaire, so I'm not coming out of this, with unlimited funds to make it successful. So just being resourceful and making sure you understand what your options are and then not giving up, right? That's the biggest thing. You're going to every single one of us hits challenges and things that look insurmountable, but we have a little poster on the wall here that says everything is figure outable. So, the concept of, okay, you're going to fail forward. You've got to solve the problem. Just because you hit it, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, that resourcefulness and that resiliency, those two things are big for entrepreneurs to hear, because there are going to be those days where you're just like, you're trucking along. And I think of, you get so far down the line, right? When you've already invested blood, sweat, tears, money into this project, and something like that happens, and you're like, look, I'm too far down the line to pull the plug on this. I have to make a go of it. And I think of a client that I worked with a couple of years ago who was starting a new school, it was a K through 12 private school type of thing, had millions and millions of dollars of funding, but then something stupid in the economy can change, and that whole faucet of money just gets turned off and it's no longer available. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm sitting here like ready to go. I have this plan. It's a great plan. All this stuff's in place. So taking the blows from the left and the right and still being able to push forward is a great message. And it's a great message, especially for you as an educator, because listen, how many times, again, going back to blowing stuff up, you don't know if it's going to work when you might hope it's going to work when you put A and B together, but it could blow something up and you got to start over from scratch and learn from it and mitigate the mistake the next time around. So the message of resiliency is super, super important, especially in the line of work that you guys are in right now. Tell me this, the one thing, people living in Wesley Chapel, in the Bruce B. Downs, 54, 56, that whole area of Wesley Chapel, people that are listening to this, what is the one thing they need to know? If they're sending their kids to the Steam Factory, what do you want them to know as to why they should bring their kids to you?
Oh, that's easy. They're going to see, positive change in their kids' lives. Absolutely, the end state. I think creativity, the outlet, the community, the understanding of technology and how it impacts our lives, and the educational support is all things that are going to positively impact their kids' lives. And our hope is that this becomes a safe place where kids can kind of express themselves, explore, and really take the time to learn something without the stress of having to be on a time schedule and the curriculum and the chaos that's out there in life. Come here because you love to learn and you love to create, and that'll change kids' lives.
And pushing their boundaries a little bit, right? Like in school, it's you take a test, you pass or you fail. In this, you're in this environment where it's promoting that thinking outside the box type of atmosphere, which again, growing up the way we just didn't have that. It was you learned this subject matter, you took a test, you either knew it or you didn't know it. There was no pushing there wasn't a lot of pushing of boundaries.
This is learning. This is absolutely learning because you want to learn the subject, even if the kid doesn't have a lifelong desire to be a robotics engineer. They're still going to enjoy the challenges, and it's going to come from within them. So it's not anything we're going to push upon them. They're going to be on their own journeys, and we're going to be here to support it.
So let me ask you this, the $1 million question. I have a kid. He is 13 years old, and he is interested in doing something. How do the parents get a hold of you? What's the best way to contact the Steam Factory?
We have 3 ways to get us. The best way is to stop by the actual store. We're opening this week, and so that'll be pretty excited. And we're over here at 3740 Windcrest Drive near Dunkin' Donuts, as we said, up there on Bruce B. Downs. And coming into the facility, we can show you all of the hardware we have. We can walk you around a little bit, show you our theory of how we're going to work. If you don't have time to stop by, you can go to our website, which is steamfactory.us, or you can call us at 800-975-3350, and we can set up an appointment for you to come in or explain to you over the phone all of our great opportunities.
So, folks, if you're listening to this, if you are in Saddlebrook, Estancia, The Ridge, Seven Oaks, any of the neighborhoods, Live Oak, up and down Bruce B. Downs, and if your kid is a little bit advanced and he wants some additional exposure, that's one way to go. Or if your child doesn't exactly know what they want to do and you want to expose them to something that is going to open their eyes and maybe get them engaged, definitely go check out the Steam Factory, steamfactory.us, right on Bruce B. Downs. You said store, I like to say campus, because it is kind of more like a campus for kids to go and figure out what they're going to do. 1-800-975-3350. Rick Marshall, thank you for being on. Thank you for being a good neighbor. Thank you for being a part of the Wesley Chapel community, and I hope you have a great day, man. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Passcode. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnppasco.com. That's gnppasco.com, or call 813-922-3610.